All right, 9:01, I'm going to kick things off. So, hi everyone, good morning. As promised last week by Jen, we have sort of shifted the facilitator role or grown the facilitator role of these meetings between SRPC, REDC, and RPC. So this week, I pulled the short straw to facilitate. So for those who I haven't officially met yet, my name is Sarah Tatarzik, and I'm a regional planner with the Rockingham Planning Commission. And I've been on the calls for the better part of the last year, but haven't really taken much more of a role than kind of sitting in and listening. So happy to be your facilitator today. And funny enough, as we kick things off, I'm actually going to hand it over to James, our fearless former facilitator for our workforce development subcommittee update.
Hey y'all. So yeah, it's a fun job, Sarah. I wouldn't call it a short straw kind of a gig. So we met as a committee yesterday. The call for marketing firms was out, released I think November 22nd or 23rd. We asked for respondents to send their proposals.
Yeah, I was just calling to tell you that my dad.
The end of the day on
stuff from the new refrigerator.
Thursday.
Over to the new refrigerator.
Okay, let's mute if you are not talking.
So we sent out a specific solicitation to a list of firms, I think 13 firms that the committee pulled together that would be potentially interested or that people have worked with in the past. We got 4 proposals and heard back from probably 2 or 3 other that they either weren't available or couldn't do the entire brief. So I think a positive response rate in some form or another of about 50% is pretty good in my experience for something like this. Of the 4 proposals, all of them seemed like they could do some or most of the work, but in the opinion of the committee, 2 really rose to the top. So we would like to set up a follow-up interview with the top 2 marketing firms to get a little bit more in detail on how they would approach the project, how to fit the type of work that's going to have the greatest impact into our limited $20,000 budget. Most of the well, I guess the call for quotes was really just asking about, hey, can you give us a la carte pricing for comparison rather than put together a scope? So we're hoping to use that follow-up interview conversation to sort of turn the page and start thinking about how we would put that scope together. How many of which kind of deliverables would we like them to put together? Which deliverables would they suggest as having the best impact for what we're looking to do? So I notified the 2 firms yesterday, and we would like to try and set those interviews up for next Tuesday, if possible, so that we can hopefully have made a decision before the holidays and can be working on contracting over the rest of the month to have somebody ready to go in January. So any comments, questions on that?
James?
Yeah, John.
Are you permitted to tell us who the 2 vendors are?
I would prefer not to right now, just because we haven't notified the other 2 firms that they're not moving forward. But yeah, I'd be happy to share that down the road. We'll circle back internally because I pretty much went straight from getting the proposals in on Thursday and Friday of last week to getting it over to the committee and looking at them. So I'll touch base with SRPC folks about whether we need to publish the names of everybody who submitted publicly on our website and all of that. So I'll be following up on those logistics. In the conversation, the committee did sort of refine the focus of what we were looking for. I think when we put the grant proposal together, our scope and our intentions were a little bit general, and hearing some of the questions that people had for us, both in response to the RFP as they were putting their submissions together, as well as based on what we saw in some of the proposals. We put together a refined sorry, I'm lying down on the job with the waiting room. Let me let some folks in. So we put together a refined vision statement to help clarify, after talking further, this is exactly what we're hoping to do. This is the audience we're hoping to reach. And we have given that to both of the top two firms so that they can use that to prepare for our conversation next week. So I'd be happy to send that around to folks afterwards. I'm not sure, we don't have it online anywhere, so I don't think it'll drop into the chat easily, but I can email it to everybody if you want to see it.
Any other questions, comments before we move on? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, James. The next item on our agenda is to revisit our sort of CEDR reporting metrics that have to go into BEA by the end of this calendar year for our report looking back from the start of our CEDR grant, so October 1 through the end of December. We had set a sort of rough deadline for folks to try to send us metrics by, I think, the end of last week, and I think we've only received one or two. So I was hoping to have a discussion today, a little bit further of a discussion. I know we've hit this a couple times already, but seeing if there's any folks on the call who've thought about this any further, have any additional ideas, anyone who would be willing to sort of put their name down as being willing to send some metrics to James and myself by the end of this week so that we can start working on the report next week, and we can kind of jointly go back and forth on it between the holidays to get something to BEA by the end of this month. We did receive a good example of what we're sort of looking for from REDC, and I wanted to highlight some of the points of what they provided for you guys just to get the wheels spinning. And we can also send this out as an example or a model after this call too, as people are putting things together. But REDC basically just provided, 2 or 3 sentences at the top of narrative. Oh, James, thank you. Perfect. Narrative of sort of how these meetings have provided value in sort of more of a qualitative way, what they've been about and how they've taken the information that they've learned on these calls and used it in their work and daily operations. And then you can see on the second half of the email, they've sort of listed out who their reach is, right? So current clients, former clients, lenders, municipalities, etc. And then at the bottom, they've provided us with some more quantitative data. So even though it's not necessarily super specific to exactly these calls, we can sort of start to thread the needle of how the information that they're gaining on these calls are actually reaching their client base and their respective partners. So we've got like social media data as well as newsletter, email reach. And I just see a message in the chat. So this is sort of what we're hoping to get from, a handful of folks. If we can get, I think, a half a dozen of these, we'd be in really good shape for the report. Sarah asked a question in the chat. For the purpose of this group, REDC was Regional Economic Development Center or Rochester Economic Regional. Yep. So any questions or comments on sort of what we're looking for? And does anyone have any thoughts, or was anybody planning on sending anything to James and myself already and just haven't gotten the chance to?
I would just offer for, again, I'm not on your side of the table with this, but for those who don't have data, myself included, I believe in talking to Taylor too, that anything that people can send, even if it's anecdotal and non-literal and data-driven, that tells a story of why this is valuable, will help in the process. So I hope you've received my letter, but also I think to remind people it doesn't have, if you're one of those like me who don't actually have hard data, you can still tell a story that's valuable.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Robin. We don't necessarily need the numbers if we can have a combination of some numbers and some more anecdotal, how you're using the resources here in your daily work and what that reach looks like. And it would also be great to have metrics from groups like REDC, SBDC, but also from our municipalities on the call, as well as any of our state groups on the call, to get sort of that vast outreach.
Yeah, I think to that end, qualitative stuff is a little bit more effective if you can at least focus on like one or two details of, here's maybe a bigger picture description of how this has helped me, but if I can put in, hey, this was really useful in this kind of a situation, or it helped me help this business in this way, or some of that focused, so we can at least see, all right, here's an example of the details. They're not just saying it's really, 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 really useful. It led to this kind of economic activity, or it helped me do my job in this way. The more at least details we can give them, I think usually the better it looks to them, but also I think the better it's going to make them look if they have to take what we're reporting and turn around and feed it back up to the feds.
Yes, and so Robin, James, Sarah, just thank you very much. Everything that they've just said is all true. And if there are any questions, you can reach out to them directly, and they can contact me, or we can do a call this week or next week, and go over questions or comments that you may have. Thank you very much.
So I know at previous meetings, I think we had a couple other folks who said that they were able to send things in, but is anyone on this call, was anyone on this call intending to send something to James or myself and just hasn't gotten it in yet and might be able to this week?
I can probably send you something this week. It's going to be tough. We don't have metrics either. I'm in the same boat yet. We're working on getting some next year. But there are specific examples. So you've had some speakers on that have shared information that I have then relayed to business owners. Is that the kind of data that you're looking for in those examples, is what you're looking for?
I think that's a great example. Jen Kimball's email, for example, had just, when we send this out to businesses or to contacts, we've got a contact list of 500 people that this gets blasted to. So if you all have email lists, and I know you all got a bigs list from me at some point because I pulled it for the entire state. If you're still using that to email people to, or if you've got an email thread for just, Robin, I know you have your bankers, investors, and brokers list. So if you could just say, hey, I frequently share this with this list of 50 people and this list of 30 people. That adds some details.
James, stuff that SRPC sends us through newsletters, sometimes I grab that information and share that as well. Would that be helpful also?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's out of our bits and pieces or our newsletters, for Dover, if you wanted to talk about the down to business stuff that goes out every other week with Friday updates, or the Dover download Friday updates is Durham. Rob and I'm pretty sure I get the summer's worth newsletters to my email here periodically. So I don't know, John.
What I'm planning on doing is, unless somebody else already has done it, but sending out the information that we've shared as a group regarding the second round of the revitalization of the restaurant grant money. And I'm not sure, but I think in the same scenario that after your grant started, it was the announcement of the $100 million housing program. And we just killed that with over 500 emails. So I think those would be my two examples that I'd be very willing to share this week.
That would be great, John. Thank you. Any others? Okay. Seeing none, I think this is a good start. I've got a couple names, everyone who's sort of volunteered today. I've written down your name, so we will bug you later this week if we don't see things coming in. But if folks could get us, even if it's rough, just an outline, it doesn't need to be like anything formal. James and I can put it into the formatted report. If folks can get us their metrics by the end of this week, and I'll try to send out an email reminder, like maybe on Thursday for folks as well. That would be really helpful, just so that we can make sure between the two of us for over the holidays, we have enough time to get it into the final report. Okay, any other thoughts or comments on metrics? Otherwise, we'll sort of move on. Okay, great. So next I wanted to just go through roundtable updates. So this is the part of the meeting where if anyone has any general updates that they want to share about what's going on with their respective municipalities or organizations. I did have a couple notes from New Durham, who they weren't able to attend today. So I just wanted to get those updates out first, and then we can open it up to the group. So the first is just a reminder for those who haven't seen that SRPC is hiring for a housing navigator position for both Farmington and New Durham. So if you know anyone, send them towards SRPC. I'm sure James can send out that information as well in a reminder email. And then the last thing, which is a great point that I'm actually curious on as well, if there's anyone here who knows of any communities or who they themselves are applying for those Invest New Hampshire HOP grants. Curious if anyone is putting together applications or has already put together applications, and if so, what for? So these are the housing opportunity planning and zoning grants specifically as part of that Invest New Hampshire funding. So with that, I'll open it up to the group for either anyone who's applying for HOP grants and or if anyone has any other updates to share.
So I am, since I also wear the hat of being the Northwood Town Planner, I'm doing a little bit of work with them for their HOP grant that they're planning to submit. We're looking for the phase 1 to do a master plan chapter. They just started an update to their 2004 master plan. this year. So we're giving a vision and existing land use to start it this year. We're hoping to build on that with a housing chapter and 1 or 2 others, town meeting permitting. And then we are also hoping to get a regulatory audit, again, because with a master plan that old, it's been a long time since we've made significant changes to our site plan regulations, subdivision regulations, and sort of combined all of that with you know, a comprehensive look at the zoning ordinance and making sure everything works together. We've sort of done piecemeal edits. Vanessa dropped in the chat that Barrington is also doing a HUP grant, and they are looking for a master plan chapter as well.
And then we have a handful coming out of RPC as well. Specifically, I'm working on one for Plastow. They're looking to do the phase 1 master plan housing updates. They're also looking to do the zoning audit to figure out what opportunities might exist for housing. They're really interested in maybe doing some sort of a build out analysis to see what land is still available for housing development and for redevelopment. And then I'm also working with Brentwood to do, Brentwood would like to do, I think, all 3 phases. They have a good sense of sort of what ordinance work they would like to target already, but it makes sense they're doing their vision and transportation master plan updates this year. So they're sort of queued up to do their housing chapter update as well as the first phase, and then seeing how we can segue that into the phase 3 ordinance redevelopment. Any others? And so I'm just noting in the chat, Sarah Reitzman is on the call from New Hampshire Housing, and she's just letting everyone know that happy to review or discuss any proposal ideas with folks as a representative from the steering committee. Any other updates not related to HOP grants?
Robin, you have a pretty big update, don't you?
Well, before the drama of all that, I actually have 2 points of people are interested that I could share that's off agenda. Is that okay, James and Sarah?
Sure.
Please.
So I have a question and a comment. My comment is I did something this week that I'd like to share because it was so enormously successful, and maybe you're already doing it and it's the first time I've done it, but as many of you know, as James referred to, I had a roundtable before COVID called Bankers, Investors, and Brokers. It was enormously successful. I had about 80 people on it. We met every month, and I think we moved it to quarterly right before COVID, and I didn't reconvene it out since COVID. And so because I'm leaving, which is the third thing that James maybe wants to talk about, I thought on the eve of my departure, let me bring our key investors to the table. So I brought 5 of the most prominent and dynamic investors and developers to a small meeting to introduce them to the person who's going to replace me in the department. But most important, my primary objective was for them to meet one another so that they could work cooperatively together. So these 5, you all know them. They are amazing. They're all over the Seacoast, all over the state, and all over New England. And they have turned their attention to Somersworth right now. But as it surprised me, they really didn't know one another. And they immediately allowed time in my agenda for them to talk and connect about their projects. And long-winded story, kind of short, they're already working to support one another through the political process and the administrative process, if you will. And it's really surprising to me what Eric Chimberg has jumped into, what Ben Stebbins has jumped into. You all know David Baker too, as these 5 investors are working together. So I share that with you in case it's something that you haven't experimented with. It was It was amazing. And the second comment, if I may, James, is a question. And I can't, this is a day late, dollar short sort of question in that this week I wished so much that I had a PR warm and fuzzy overview sheet for business startups that outlined in warm fuzzy, not technical world language, but warm and fuzzy with pictures and italics, what the requirements for particular kinds of businesses are. And what specifically highlighted this, and as I thought about it, it's been a thread through my entire 5 years here, and I never focused on it well enough because I went down other rabbit holes where I knew there were resources. And the specifics are, for example, a small hair shop who's going to do her own build out with members of her family need to know what the state requirements are and the local requirements too. So I got into the building code websites, the state websites, the Somersworth websites, the New Hampshire websites, the national websites. And I just could not find simple narratives of what the specific codes are. All the implications are that once you have your code inspection, we'll tell you if you've passed or you flunked, but we're not going to tell you before that, or it's buried somewhere on some website or something. Actually, I did find a page, and all the places I looked at across the country, Milton, New Hampshire has a nice kind of warm, fuzzy PR overview. If you're a hair shop, here's what you need to do. If it's 25 people, it's this. If it's 50 people, it's that, blah, blah. And so I just wonder if anyone has that kind of tool, or if we need to cooperatively work with you, Mikkel. I know you have all that information. I ended up actually calling an inspector in Portsmouth who just gave me the narrative over the phone because I literally just couldn't find it. And so I didn't have enough life preservers to swim as deep as all the websites would want me to swim through information versus public relations. So we can talk offline, but if anyone has that kind of tool, or if you don't have it and you think it's something that this group should be working together to do, from my perspective, it would be really helpful to have that among my other warm, fuzzy PR guidelines and sheets. That's my question. And then third is unrelated to both, but my last day is December 21st. And I just want to thank all of you so much for all of your support and kindness, not just through my 5 years here, but Reed and so many of you for about 150 years that we've worked together. And thank you for all of that. So Darren, you owe me drinks in Exeter, and Reed, you owe me drinks in Dover. Mikkel, you owe me drinks in the Seacoast region somewhere. And James, I'm going to see you at the Seacoast Tall Ship Festival in summer. And
How about the drinks in Coronado, Robin?
oh my God. I will let you know when I'm going home. Hop on an airplane, my friend.
Sold.
First stop, Hotel del Coronado, my
That's
friend.
right. First stop. First stop. That's right.
If I get there before you, I'm sending pictures just to rub salt wound.
As you should. As you should. Hotel Del. Very
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you all so much. And James, you walk on water. I'm stepping aside from it now, and I wonder if I see it better than when you're in the middle of it. But honestly, James, what we've been through with COVID and all of you, all of us, and what we've survived, I just feel you all deserve so much credit. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Robin. It takes two to collaborate.
I guess it does.
Or in our case, 200.
Yeah. So I'm getting texts like, when is the party? There's no party. I've asked for no party. So when you want to drink with me, call me and tell me where we meet. We'll do that.
Yeah, I was gonna bring, so I contacted the staff because they need to add. Anyone else, any other updates? So this is our last meeting for the year. So our next meeting, which I probably should have pulled up the date, will be in January. James, do you know that date off the top of your head? for our first meeting in January?
My calendar is up. So if we stick on the same every other week schedule, we would have one on the 27th that we're canceling due to Christmas. So that would set us up for January 10th, which would give us a little bit of distance from the New Year's holidays. So everybody's still good to stay on the same every other week schedule for the next year?
Yeah.
Right, then we can go ahead. I'm pretty sure I only set up both the Zoom and the calendar invitation to last through 2022, so I can get that set up for the next year.
Awesome. So if no one has anything else, we'll be in touch. I'll send out a reminder email for those metrics. Also, we can send out the REDC sort of sample language for folks to be able to base their metrics off of. But as discussed, even just some qualitative kind of anecdotal metrics would also be super useful. And otherwise, we'll see you all in the new year, except for Robin.
Sarah, can I add something?
Please, yeah.
I just wanted to say thanks to Ginny, because every time we get on here, 5 minutes in, she sends out a link that I end up sending to a lot of people, and it's always something different. It's very, very helpful. And nobody really says anything about it. I just want to say thanks to her and Merry Christmas to everybody else.
Thanks, Darren. You're very welcome.
Awesome. All right. Well, happy holidays, everyone. We'll see you in January.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.